had the honor and privilege of working with Wizard World for the majority of the year and hosting or moderating a lot of these celebrity panels. And now's the time of the year, it's the end of the year, where people start asking, all right, who are some of your favorite panels from the year? And I think I surprised a lot of people when I look back to Philadelphia and I got to meet you for the very first time. Your panel blew me away.
Oh, well, thank you.
Blew me away. And I don't know if this is like bending the fourth wall of Comic-Con, but your answers are real. Your answers are honest and thought out. And not every celebrity has that.
Well, let's hope I can have some of that this morning.
So, we're going to take some questions right there and get right to it.
How are you?
I'm doing fine. I'm actually a really big fan of Breaking Bad. I really love Revolution due to the fact that storyline actually happened in the real world. Now, my question to you is, if the power did go out, what would you do to help you and your family survive through that world?
Well, we're in a world now where it really is an issue, and the wonderful storyline that goes on in Revolution is that it lays it out there. Eric Kripke, who wrote the piece and conceived it, obviously J.J. Abrams has helped bring in what he calls the special sauce, because in putting things together. But it's always been a show that's been a what if this happened? And it's something that we have to take a look at. Now we have windmill power and other ways of figuring out alternative energy, which I think is very important for our world. And the show, thank goodness, it's entertaining and not just science and not just action-packed drama. What would I do? I've always thought, I have a family that I don't live with, but that they live up in Red Hook, New York, and I always say to my wife-ish, Joy, have the car filled up and go to Canada. But where will you go in the world if the whole world is blacked out, and how will you live? Well, I think, for me, I've always been a big camper, and I got a book from a friend years ago called How to Survive in the Woods. And so part of survival is skill, is knowledge, is understanding and getting closer to the earth. That's what I love about this show, Revolution. It allows us to think about how far away from nature we actually live. How easy it is to flip on a light switch. If you notice, this second season of Revolution, it's less about flipping the switch on and off, which is important because the first season we looked at that. Now it's important to look at ways that you would be a survivor and have some skills to understand nature and understand weather and understand how to build for yourself out of what you have in nature. Our forefathers did it. It's important for us to get a little closer to it. Hopefully we'll never have to be in a situation where we'll need to use it in that way. However, it is important to realize how distant we've become from the world of elements and our ability to survive within that.
Well, if we ever do find ourselves in that situation, we're following you.
Hey, you know what? Playing this guy has really helped strengthen my resolve that I need to keep my knowledge up about what I would do and how I would do it, and because you never know. After all, I am on TV, and if it did happen, I'd probably have a bunch of people following me around. So I'd have to try to save all of you. Oh, what a responsibility that would be! But I'll try.
Hello. A lot of people are here for Breaking Bad and Once Upon a Time, but I'm actually a really big fan of Homicide, Live on the Streets. And I was just wondering what it was like to work with that amazing ensemble cast, and if you pulled on your own personal background for the character.
I did actually. It's really interesting. I got called to do that show by Tom Fontana in its 6th year. So I wound up doing the last year of the show to replace Andre Braugher. And I wound up also doing the Homicide movie. But what I said to Tom, Tom actually ran that show for Barry Levinson, who was one of the creators of that show. First of all, it was lovely to work with that cast because many of them were New York actors from the stage. And I'm a theater actor to begin with, and that is something that allows you to develop a skill. Many theater actors have a way of working that are building blocks that give them a skill which they fall in love with, which carries over into every aspect of what they do as an actor. And that's why you see some actors who have a full plate, full personality, because they've done their homework. And I hope that I'm one of those actors. I consider myself to be one. So all those people I worked with really had worked on their characters, and it was like folding into a company or a family of actors that were thoughtful and did great work. For me, I didn't want to step in and take over and and play the same role Andre Braugher did. So I said to Tom, I would love to explore my half Italian and half black heritage. And if we could do that through my characterization, I think that would bring something extra to that particular piece, and I hope it did. I certainly enjoyed playing Mike Giardello.
Thanks for coming.
Pleasure.
Between Gus and Neville, which is your favorite character that you portrayed?
Oh, it's such a hard question. My favorite character that I, without comparison, and then I will compare for you because that's what you're asking. But my favorite character that I play is the character I'm playing now. Because I believe that you can live in the past, you can live in the future, but you can also, and what I think is best, is to live in the present. And right now, I'm playing a guy named Tom Neville. And yes, half of the room is going to come up to me and compliment me or want to take a photo of me because I played a guy named Gus Fring. Well, I've had to let Gus Fring go and allow Tom Neville to be in my consciousness. So that's all I think about right now. So they're both favorites of mine. I'm looking to they're both very different for me. Gus is very, held close to the vest and really is the businessman and the mastermind. Tom Neville is a little more emotional, although he does keep somewhat of a poker face. Inside, he is burning up for the love of his wife. He really does want justice for the world. He really is also the ultimate survivor. So they're very different people, but the character I love the most is the character I'm playing now because that's the one I want to allow to take over my complete being. We think in our lives that we're able to multitask. And certainly it looks like that, right? I mean, it looks like I could still be on point and I have a sharp enough brain to talk to you and check my text, and I can do all this, but you know what? The reality is you're not doing any one thing completely and fully.
Right.
And you're fooling yourself. And you know when you have someone's attention, and you know when you don't. So if you want to do things fully in life, you do one thing at a time, and that's the way I am. I wake up in the morning, if I had to work, Friday I came in here, right? And I had to work, they switched my schedule because of the rain. When you all know the weather just hit here terribly, right? So they said to me, you're going to come and work Friday. So I called and said, I can't make it. Please tell the fans I won't be here Friday. And then they told me my call is 7 p.m. And then I went, what do I do now? I've got 5 scenes I'm going to work all night Friday night, which I did, and then came back here. I worked till 5 in the morning Friday night. But my concern was, do I have the focus and attention to know my lines, come and be this other guy? If you make a separation in that, I try not to. I try to be the same. But can I please my fans and then go to work and know my lines? Because I start as soon as I wake up on that day, looking at all my scenes, thinking about what my actions are, knowing my lines. I'm a dedicated actor. So I did make it in here. I had a lot of fun with you guys. I went to work at 7, and I worked all night. But I did know my stuff.
That's very difficult. Very
well,
difficult.
It takes attention, is my point. Focus and attention to have, what are the keys to success for you personally? It's putting the time in and doing the work and then allowing your focused attention to serve what you're trying to do. And for me, if I spend the whole day working on my material, when the camera rolls, there'll be no stumble. I'll be able to be completely in the character's emotional space and do my best work. So I suggest that, what are the keys to success? It is commitment and sacrifice. Those are, and love. Because you gotta love what you do to commit to it. You gotta love what you do to give up something to get more of that feeling of completion from your work. And when you make that connection, you will find something that you love to do and you will never work a day in your life. Doesn't mean it's without commitment. It doesn't mean it's without stress. And it doesn't mean it's going to be easy. But the fullness and completion that you derive from doing something that serves all of us up. When you're happy, I'm happy. Right? When you're who wants to be around a person who's kind of funky and who's complaining all the time? Nobody. So the collective, this is the way we have to start thinking in the world. You're responsible for your brother. You're responsible for your sister. You're responsible not only for your family of origin, but for the community of man. So when you are developing yourself into a person who doesn't necessarily, we know you can do it, not taking anything away from you, but who decides not to multitask, to give all your attention to someone for as long as you can, that is a sharing that's giving and sharing of your inner divinity. No matter what you believe, spirituality or religion, it's your inner divinity to be present. So be present. Let's move on. Great question. Thank you. Hey.
How you doing? First of all, I wanted to say thank you. My son was an extra on Revolution here in Austin, and both he and my wife dealt with you quite a bit, and you were a class act to both of them, so I just want to say thank you very much for your kindness.
You're very welcome.
Now, that being said, there's obviously kindness to you. Where the hell do you summon that for Tom Neville? Because you obviously see him as a survivor, but there's some truly sinister moments with that man. And I wondered, where do you get that?
Maybe I'm working through my anger. No, through anger, you meet people, right? You can feel their pulsating beings, pulsating with something that you may recognize and you may not. And some people have an anger from previous life or earlier times in their life that they haven't worked out. I remember how long I was angry at my father for divorcing my mother and not having him there. That manifested in so many different ways until I finally said it. And Tom Neville is pent up. He's pent up because he was stepped on for so long. If you go back to episode 105, that was the key for me. I look for a key in every character I play. In Gustavo Fring, it was hiding in plain sight. I started to think about people who are in our world, our community, a part of our churches, a part of the fabric of our society, who seem to be upstanding, but who are hiding something. That was the whole beginning for the journey of Gustavo Fring, is that he was hiding something, and he was also masking a deep pain. Tom Neville is also masking a deep pain. It's the pain of being pushed down for so long. That insurance adjuster, that meek, mild-mannered guy who had sort of this open heart, and one case he tried to help someone, and his boss said, why did you give him that check? Whatever that, you could put all that together, he was slammed down. And he stayed that way. And out of this world and the drastic change that came in the world, he became this powerful Tom Neville guy that you see on television. But underneath it, that other guy is still there. That other guy is still there. When you go back to episode 105, you see those reasons. You go back to 107, where he gives that soldier the poison and says, you can do this easy, you can do this hard. That was compassion. Take this. The guy's going to die. Your choice. He doesn't shoot that guy. You got to go back to the moments which are the chink in the armor for Tom Neville that show you he's a real human being. And as we move through this story, I think you're going to see more and more that he's about justice. You can't, there's something called tough love. And I know it's hard when we talk about tough love and a guy who's got, a Desert Eagle is going to shoot you, and he has shot people.
I was going to say it's more like brutal love.
Brutal love, yeah. That's better, baby. But, again, think about the world in which he inhabits. So there's a journey that Tom's on, and hopefully he will find that compassion and kindness again at some point when the world's a little more settled down. Or maybe he can be a part of righting what's wrong.
Speaking of my son.
Hey, what's going on?
I don't know.
Help a brother out there.
I have a question for Revolution. How will Tom Neville meeting his wife again affect your role?
Oh, it truly affects him because they have a relationship that's been formulated. You know anything about Shakespeare? Lady Macbeth? The representation. Yeah, that's okay. The representation of someone who is partly can have aspirations for the future and wanting her husband to be great because she wants to be comfortable, and he can provide that. So she is sort of the strong woman behind the man. And they have formulated this relationship where her advice and what she tells him, she has a very, very big connection to him. And she can sway his decisions. But she wants him to be on top so she can be comfortable. So they forged that relationship. So her coming back into his life is going to change him completely. Not only because he completely loves her and is dedicated to her, but he also believes that they as a team can be better and can not only fulfill their personal aspirations, which sometimes are born out of ego. I know you understand me. Born out of desire, ego, what you want. She feels they can fulfill that and also maybe do something good for the world. So it's going to change Tom Neville completely to have her around. And obviously television is a seesaw, goes back and forth and back and forth. He certainly is happy right now. I hope he can remain to be happy with his wife, Julia.
Right. Thank you.
I'll see you on the set again soon, huh?
What?
I'll see you on the set again soon.
I don't know. Except for like 2-3 months?
Yeah, at the refugee camp.
Yeah, well, you know what? If I have anything to do with it, you'll be back real soon.
A few moments ago, you mentioned about Gus hiding in plain sight, and what are they hiding? You ever find yourself going into like a KFC, looking at the manager, saying, "I'm on to you"?
I haven't yet, but that's a good one. That's a good way to a free meal.
There you go. There you go.
Big Breaking Bad fan. Can you tell us anything we might not know about Gus Fring's past and your feelings on exploring that on the Better Call Saul prequel?
Well, there is a prequel that's going to come soon. I think they start shooting in July. Vince Gilligan will write it. He doesn't know what it will be as of yet. Bob Odenkirk will obviously star in it. And I would love to possibly come back in that once I know what the show is. Gus Fring's past is not completely a mystery. He was from Chile, and he was protected. So he was one of those special people you couldn't really kill. I would love to explore that either through the Saul show or on another level. I don't know if it'll happen or how it might happen. Again, if Odenkirk is a wonderful actor, but he's also a comic. If the show is going to be a comedy, I don't know how that fits into, how Gus might come back. And there's this other thing. You see, Gus has taken over. Gus is more famous than I am, so screw that guy. I'll leave him over there, man. But the other thing is, and it was like with Do the Right Thing when Spike Lee wanted me to come back 20 years later and play Buggin' Out in a different movie, like Buggin' Out as a bum on the street. And I declined. Because I feel like some iconic roles should be left alone. And maybe that's the way it is with Gus. I don't know yet, but the more I move away from him, he's done. Would I love to see what happened before? Yeah, I would love it. And I know, and I'd love to please all you fans, but I got to listen to the gut, the intuition. Intuition, important word. The organic intuition that you have is your guide. And I've got to listen to that first. So it may not be for me to go back and do that again, but I don't know yet. So I'm still thinking about it. It's still in my consciousness.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here today. Can you talk a little bit about the significance of relocating Revolution to Austin and some of the unique experiences you've had shooting here?
Yeah, we moved here. We were in Wilmington, North Carolina for the first scene of Revolution. Some of you may know that, some of you may not. We loved it there. We were near the water in the Cape Fear area. It's a great family of filmmakers there who we love and respect. I've been going there for 29 years making movies. One of the major things that play into a movie or television show coming to your city and this city of Austin is tax credits. It's got to be financially viable, and the producers and the Warner Brothers and NBC who put their money into the show, primarily Warner Brothers, they'll make the show anywhere, wherever it's cheapest. So it plays into, you need to know this because it plays into your ability to keep a show in this city, plays into you telling your representatives that it is helping you. So we're a floating factory. So we hire people in all walks of life to work on the production. We also use dry cleaners and lumber yards and painters. All these different businesses get supported when we come into town. And it's important for you to know that to keep the tax credits here. We moved from Wilmington because the tax credits were rumored to be ceasing. And it's certainly now, this is the last year of tax credits in Wilmington. There's a lot of production there, a lot of great filmmakers who will be out of work next year because productions will not go there. We had a Teamster issue where we had Under the Dome came into Wilmington, and the Teamsters were able to exact a higher fee for their drivers. Teamsters is a very powerful union, deal with everything that's driven. And our world in film is driven on trucks. There were 17 trucks that came from Wilmington to here, bringing sets and everything else, and they went back again. So everything is driven, so that's a powerful union. Well, they wanted to raise everything 30%. They couldn't make an agreement, and we wound up scouting and coming here. That's the thumbnail sketch of it. Hopefully we will stay here. Your second part of your question, we have realized a bigger opportunity in Austin. There are more towns that we can shoot at within a 50-minute radius. If I go over 50 minutes, they have to drive me. The central cast. If it's just under 50 minutes, I drive myself. Optimum for everyone, so they don't have to pay extra money to transport everyone daily to and from set. So we have a lot more towns, and we have, I would venture to say, more experienced filmmakers here in Austin. I love it here. The crew loves it here. The crew lives here, many of them, but the cast loves it here as well. So it's been a great and opportune moment to be here, and let's just keep it going right here in Austin.
Thank you.
So the character of Bugging Out, I think, is probably the best character that Spike Lee's ever written. And a lot of that was due to your characterization. Before that, I saw you as Big Brother Almighty in School Days.
He even says it right. I love it. Big Brother Almighty.
You mentioned coming from the theater. How'd you get involved with Spike Circle, and how do you look back on that part of your career?
Oh, I love that part of my career. I love the beginnings of Spikes. It came right out of theater. I was doing a play called Zoom Man and the Sign by Pulitzer Prize-winning author named Charles Fuller in New York. He went on to write a play called Soldier's Story, which eventually became a movie. Spike came to see me in that play at the Negro Ensemble Company. I woke up after the opening night, and I had won 3 major awards. I had won the Obie Award, 2 awards, so the Obie Award and the Theater World Award for my first big dramatic piece. I come from the Broadway musical theater. I was a singer and dancer at 7 years old on the Broadway stage. I relearned how to act for the camera. I did it through doing dramas in theater because I wanted to be a dramatic actor. I didn't want to be what I started to notice around me was all African-American people were singing and dancing on the Broadway stage. And I love that. I loved Andre de Shields. I love Pearl Bailey. I love all these people who, Cab Calloway, who made their living on the stage. But I felt like that I had something more to offer, that I had a more universal appeal. Maybe it's because I'm half Italian and half black. I wanted to relate to more people. The way to do it for me, to move people from one place to another, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, was to be able to let go of this sort of two-faced personality, one black, one white, and be a universal human being. Out of my theater training, I learned how to focus my energy and learned how to act for the camera. Spike came to see me in that play. He loved it. He was blown away by it, asked me to do his first movie. Those years for me were wonderful because when you're working with someone who is emerging in their talent and creativity, who aren't jaded. See, if we could all just go back to how this young man is right here. No, I'm serious. Like, just take a step back, and take one step back and see what you enjoy out of life. Look at this kid's face. He's expectant, right? He's expectant. He's looking. We're young. We look up. We're expectant. The world's going to be good. Our lives are in front of us. We're going to gain knowledge. We're going to share things. We're going to be able to be creative. We're going to have people support us in that creation. And as we get older, we get jaded and we don't like our job, and we never change it. Change is good. Change it. Change it now. You are supposed to. Happiness is a choice. The way you live your life is a choice. You're not just being pushed around. You have some say in it. My point is, you get a little older, you start looking here, you're looking here, and before you know it, you're walking around like this. You got no pep in your step, and you're just like, why am I doing what I do? Why do I love coming here? I love coming here because people are excited. There's some energy behind all of this. It's not just that you're going to spend your money and get an autograph. You're excited to see people you like. You're excited by the stories that these comic books tell you. You're excited, right? So why don't we celebrate being excited in life? Why don't we share that with each other? Why don't we go, hey man, I don't think, you don't look so happy with this gig you're doing. Come home. If he comes home like this, right, whose job is it to tell him, hey, you know, maybe we should talk about what you're doing because you're not coming home very happy. You got to be happy in life. So that time for me is special because an emerging filmmaker with an emerging talent, emerging energy, that's what we want to be attracted to. So I love that period of time in my career, and I'll always remember it as being healthy and wonderful and fantastic. Recently, I went back to that block in Brooklyn, and we did a photo shoot for EW. And you know what I love about Spike? As our friendship has been on and always on, but it's been contentious at some points in time. I don't always agree with his politics. I don't always agree with what he thinks about race. But you know, I went back to that block and did this photo shoot. Me, Sam Jackson, Spike Lee, Bill Nunn, Danny Aiello's son, Frank Vincent, the Italians, the blacks, all of us. And Spike's energy is good. He's excited about life. He's still excited about filmmaking. And I looked at him and I went, I don't care what his politics are. I don't care if we disagree. I call him sometimes and he curses me out because I said something in the Times. I called him a racist. I said, well, you were a racist. I wasn't a racist. And he cursed me out for 45 minutes. And when I got there that day, this is how friends are. He looked at me. I hadn't talked to him in 2 months. He looked at me and he said, first thing he walked right up to me. You know how Spike walks. He's like, and he walked up to me and he goes, Giancarlo, we all right? We all right? We good, right? We good, right? And I'm like, yeah, we're good. I love you. That's what it's about. I don't agree with everything that he says. And some of you won't agree with some things that your friend said. It doesn't mean he's not my friend. And what I notice about him, and the point of this is, he has energy. He loves what he does. He still gets excited. This is important for our life. It is the fabric for our life. If you don't like what you do, and you realize you may need to change, but you're afraid, change it. Be in that fear for 5 minutes, change what you do, move on to something that really fills you up. Very important. Thank you.
Like I said, I don't think Spike's the only one with energy.
I got a little bit.
Hi, big Breaking Bad fan here. So, Gus Fring, just big criminal mastermind, always one step ahead of everyone in the show, and we all thought towards the end of the season, we were like, how is he going to go? How are they going to get rid of him? At one point, we were like, no, there's no way. This has to be epic. My question is, how did you feel, or what was your response to them telling you, hey, you're going out by being blown up?
Well, you know, I had this whole conversation with Vince after 401. I did 401. I knew the audience wouldn't want to see me in 402 because of the reprehensible thing I did with that box cutter. And so I came back in 403, and I was in my trailer, and Vince had come down to visit the set and do some writing. He had directed 401, and I got called to his office, and I went, oh, this can't be good. Principal's office, and I got called into his office, and he sat down. We were chatting. I wanted to direct when we were talking about that, and then he said, you know, let me just close the door. And I looked at him and I said, no, Vince, you don't close the door. And he stayed there, and we talked a little more, and you could see him getting a little uncomfortable, and then he got up again. I said, Vince, what I done? And he sat back down again. The third time, he got really flipped out. He stood up, and I stood up with him, and I said, Vince, I told you. Don't close the door. And he was, and then I said, go ahead, close the door. He closed the door, we had the conversation. And, you know, he asked me, which was the wonderful thing. You know, he didn't know how Gus was going to go. And I said, look, we've already had, you know, I don't think he's going to get shot. He's already stood down the gun. I don't know how it might happen, but, you know, he said, well, we're considering a few different things. It could be poison. I said, I don't know about poison. But whatever it is, it's got to be fantastic. And he said, we've been talking about a possible explosion. And I went, I kind of like that. And he said, we're not sure. We're trying a lot of things. And he kept me in the loop through the whole thing, which was great, which was out of great respect. Remember, he said to me, well, you know, I died in 413. And this was in 403. So there was 6 months to get all this prepared. I felt as if he was treating me like a collaborator, which is wonderful. Whether you guys know it or not, no matter what you do, we always have to have a big boss man, right? Gus was the big boss man. But the big boss man, in my way of creating Gus, was a man who took care of his family. A man provides. The nature of his universe were people, and network were people he worked with, but he cared for them. He put his chemist through school and everything else. Believe it or not, your big boss man or woman in your lives wants your feedback too. You see, people want to be led, they want to be told, and that's good. But I would venture to say that empowering you to know that the big boss man needs you too, and would like to see what's going on inside your head and your heart, and would like to see what kind of suggestions you may have for whatever business you're undertaking with that partnership. So don't forget, the story I'm telling you is I felt empowered to, not in the way of power, but in the way that I am empowered by my creativity, to help him think of ways that Gus could die respectfully, gracefully, and with dignity. And I urge you to remember this little particle. So I felt honored. And all through the progress of figuring that out, Vince even asked me, what might he be doing? And I said, well, I can only be inspired by how I feel when I'm in Gus's mode. And I'm always sort of fixing myself, being appropriate. And I went, oh, wow, I'm fixing my tie. This is something that is a Gusism that I've developed from the beginning. You're closing my jacket, and before I sit down, you open the jacket, or open the first. This protocol of the way Gus lived, and I had thought about it. So, a great honoring to be a part of that final decision of what would happen to him. It was all, a work in progress, and the connection here is that you're all, as I am, as is what you are involved in, no matter what your business is, a work in progress. Feel and take responsibility to be a part of it. You have an opinion. Don't be dumbed down to the idea that you're not connected to what you do, even though there's someone who is of higher power above you in that position. You're a contributor. Think of yourselves as being contributors to every part of what you do, every part of your life, just as you're here contributing to the energy in this room today, and to me, and to the person next to you. That's what it's about. Thanks for your question.
Thank you.
I have a lot of friends who work on Revolution, and they all say you're an absolute amazing person to work with, and I can see why. You have great energy. What I want to ask is, with your background and your career and everything you've done, how does an actor like yourself, maybe how do you view the world that you're working in versus the indie world that's under there? The people who are trying to be come up and be the next filmmakers. How do you go about making that process of whether you're going to dip your toe into that or not?
Well, there are a lot of decisions that come into that. We all want to grow and want to go to the next level of what we're doing. I love indie film because I love working with filmmakers who are new and, again, unjaded, fresh, new ideas. They're uninhibited. I met Robert Rodriguez last night. I see he's one of those people. So much so that he does his own thing outside of the normal Hollywood system. The ability to be able to be free outside of that system is great, because on a show like Revolution, there are 26 producers and everything goes through Los Angeles, and if I change my line, they've got to call LA and ask if that's okay. And they give me a certain amount of, they're deferential to me because of my experience, so probably less of those calls for me. But I've got to call Eric Kripke in Los Angeles on his cell phone if he doesn't approve the jacket I want to wear. And I say, why? I feel like it's really Neville. Well, it looks too cool. Well, what if we did this? So what I'm saying is, it's filmmaking by committee. So you're unable to have a sort of spontaneous, natural kind of flow, because there are all these people that have to make all these decisions. One decision. All these people have to weigh in on one decision before you can get an answer. That's trouble. I directed my first film, Gospel Hill. I said, look, I'm a new filmmaker. I love all of you. You're going to be my filmmaking family. I know a bit about filmmaking, but I want all of your help. And you're going to come to me with suggestions, and I'm going to take them. And I'm going to see, my job is, as a director, to see if those suggestions fit what I'm trying to do. Sometimes it's a prayer or a meditation to get the answer. However, not going to take all your suggestions because they don't fit the bigger picture. I have to make that decision. It might be the wrong decision. It might be the right decision. But that's what you have to do if you're a leader and you're a director. And you got to take responsibility that it could be either or. But what works best for the piece? So independent film for me is a wonderful world to be in because guess what you have to do before you're successful? You got to know if you're able to fail. And failing is an experience that is not as strong as the word as the word is. You know, we think of failure as a horrible thing. Failure is growth. Because you know what works and what doesn't work. And you know what works for you and what doesn't work for you. But you have to go through the experiment of trying it before you know, right? So that's what I love about independent film. I tell my acting students, do your worst acting school of acting. Do it over the top. Do it terribly. Be a buffoon. Be a clown. Because once you get that out of your system, you're going to find the level and the balance that you are comfortable with that is truthful, honest, and real. So I love however, flip side now, independent film, there's a discipline that comes about what I'm doing. I'm working on a network show with 22 episodes. There's all these pieces to it. If I screw up out in real life, I'm done because that reflects on the show. If I'm not a good actor, they can maybe live with that for a little while, but that also reflects on the show. If I'm not a good voice for the show, there's a representational effort here that has to be taken into consideration. So I've got to be good on all these different levels to be able to not only do my work, but to serve up the network and the show appropriately. It's important. So all these pieces play into it. I hope I answered your question.
Amazing. Thank you.
I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit more about your upcoming project, Patriotic Treason.
Yeah, Patriotic Treason, written by Evan Carton from University of Texas, UT, here in Austin. And he's a great writer. It's a book that was written from letters about John Brown, the abolitionist who's been so maligned in our history of the United States. He believed that you could not be a Christian and you could not be a patriot if you held another man as your slave. Pretty simple. And during that period of time, through the Kansas wars, there was a war over Kansas because Kansas was up to be a free state or a slave state, and it was left to the people who moved in and settled there to decide. And it became a mess because the ruffians from Missouri came over to actually preserve slavery in that state. It was economic, it was spiritual, it was religious, it was personal, and it was a horrible war with which John Brown sort of cut his teeth, calling himself Tommy Brown, or Captain Brown, or the Old Man, but he wanted slavery and justice. This book is really incredible. The script is being written by Jose Rivera. Actually, it's already written. I am rewriting it with Jose. Ed Harris will star as John Brown, and I'll star as Frederick Douglass. It's an important part of our history. Many of us think that Lincoln freed the slaves. Well, he did. Lincoln was a lawyer, and I love Abraham Lincoln. Don't get me wrong. However, the beginning of the Civil War, and what started that whole movement, was one man, by the way, who was U.S. Postmaster, a master tanner, a shepherd. He knew Thoreau. He knew all the major brains of that period of time and major spiritual people. He was driven by God, so we labeled him a fanatic because he talked about God's goodness, and he talked about divinity, and he talked about what he believed about the Bible, so it was easy for us to discount him. But he began the movement that had us all become free, because I believe that you can't only just free a black man, but as you free slaves, and there have been other slaves besides black slaves, we all know that, then you are free yourself. So his story is really important. I hope to shoot this summer on my hiatus and get $10 million to shoot it, and be making a movie as a director. It'll be my second film, and I'm looking forward to it.
We have about 1 minute left, so you're going to be our last question.
The pressure's on, baby.
So, obviously I'm a big fan of Breaking Bad, as many people here are. But I also recognize you from your work on Once Upon a Time, where you played the genie. And I have to admit, I was raised on the Robin Williams version. And I noticed themselves, or taking on previous roles like Macbeth, King Lear, Sweeney Todd, and adding their own take to it? I was wondering what you prefer in your process.
Well, I always, I honor the classics and I love them. I've done Brecht and Shakespeare and I love the way that's laid out. I'm always interested in bringing new audience to classical work. And I think for me, to be able to do something new and different is always phenomenal within the context of the classical nature of the material. I'm from the theater, so don't forget, the writer's words are ultimate to me. And I don't believe that I have the right to change them because I'm a channel. I'm a channel for the words that were written. So then it becomes a little trickier to create that new kind of character through old classical words. But it's possible, and I love how Susan Stroman has done it in terms of her direction. A masterful genius director, and many other directors, Oxford Eustace, many people. So for me, that genie, I started to realize, I've always wanted to play a genie. My whole life, when you see genies as a kid, I would see genies, and I wanted, but I never saw a genie who had like darker skin. And when you think about Arabia and that area of the world, that's who a genie was. But a genie was also a warrior. He was also a warrior. And to me, that genie I played Once Upon a Time was so welcome and such a great role for me to play at that time in my life. I always wanted to jump out of a bottle. And one of my favorite scenes was hanging out inside the bottle, like sitting there making it move. Hey, what's going on? All of that stuff is so wonderful because it contains a mystical world which some of us have left behind. And it's important to realize that our world of history, our world of the classic prose and English, that world is there to link up our imaginations and to provide us with knowledge of a deeper world that resides inside of us. We're here at a Comic-Con where you're getting an iconic look at where do you think all this material comes from? It comes from a deeper journey. If you've ever read Joe Campbell, The Hero's Journey. Joe Campbell, it's mythology. It's there to teach us something deeper, a way to live, a way to interact. And whether or not, even if you don't realize this show is born out of mythology. It's a powerful way of looking at the world and a powerful tool to look into the future and to also stay present. And I venture to say that's why I love it here, and I venture to say that that's why many of you love it here. That connection is important to realize and serve up, and I could not be happier to have made the connection in my life to be here at this Austin Comic-Con. Thank you so much.
Let's hear it for Giancarlo Esposito, everybody.
You guys are awesome. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Thank you. Have a great